in which our lovers begin to learn the consequences of their actions. Chapter 30. At the end of September, lumber was delivered for the building of the cattle yard on the land allotted to the association, and the butter from the cows was sold and the profits distributed. The practical side of the farming was going excellently, or at least it seemed so to Levine. Now, to explain the whole thing theoretically, and to finish his book, which, according to Levine's dreams, was not only to bring about a revolution in political economy, but was to abolish that science altogether and initiate a new science of the relation of the peasantry to the land. The only thing necessary was to go abroad and study on sight everything that had been done in that direction, and to find convincing proofs that everything done there was not what was needed. Levine was waiting only for the delivery of the wheat, so as to get the money and go abroad. But rain set in, which prevented the harvesting of the remaining grain and potatoes, and put a stop to all work, even the delivery of the wheat. Mud made the roads impassable. 2 mills were washed away by floods, and the weather was getting worse and worse. On September 30th, the sun came out in the morning, and, hoping for good weather, Levine resolutely began to prepare for departure. He ordered the wheat to be measured out, sent the steward to the merchant to get the money, and went round the estate himself to give final orders before his departure. Having done everything, wet from the streams that poured from his leather jacket either down his neck or into his boots, but in a most cheerful and excited mood, Levine returned home towards evening. The weather grew still worse towards evening. Hail beat so painfully on his drenched horse that he walked sideways, twitching his ears and head. But Levine felt fine under his hood, and he glanced cheerfully around him, now at the turbid streams running down the ruts, now at the drops hanging on every bare twig, now at the white spots of unmelted hail on the planks of the bridge, now at the succulent, still fleshy elm leaves that lay in a thick layer around the naked tree. Despite the gloom of the surrounding nature, he felt himself especially excited. Talks with the peasants in their distant village had shown that they were beginning to get used to their relations. The old innkeeper at whose place he stopped, in order to dry off, apparently approved of Levine's plan, and himself offered to join the partnership to buy cattle. I need only persist in going towards my goal, and I'll achieve what I want, thought Levine. And so work and effort have their wherefore. This is not my personal affair. It is a question here of the common good. Agriculture as a whole, above all the position of the entire peasantry, must change completely. Instead of poverty, universal wealth, prosperity. Instead of hostility, concord, and the joining of interests. In short, a revolution, a bloodless but great revolution, first in the small circle of our own region, then the province, Russia, the whole world. Because a correct thought cannot fail to bear fruit. Yes, that is a goal worth working for, and the fact that it is I, Kostya Levine, the same one who came to the ball in a black tie and was rejected by Miss Sherbatsky, and is so pathetic and worthless in his own eyes, proves nothing. I'm sure that Franklin felt as worthless and distrusted himself in the same way, looking back at his whole self. That means nothing. And he, too, surely had his Agafya Mikhailovna, to whom he confided his projects. In such thoughts Levin rode up to the house when it was already dark. The steward, who had gone to the merchant, came and brought part of the money for the wheat. The arrangement with the innkeeper was made, and the steward had found out on the way that the wheat had been left standing in the fields everywhere, so that his own 160 stacks were nothing in comparison with what the others had lost. After dinner, Levin sat down in his easy-chair with a book, as usual, and while reading, continued to think about his forthcoming trip in connection with his book. Today, the significance of what he was doing presented itself to him with particular clarity, and whole paragraphs took shape of themselves in his mind, expressing the essence of his thinking. This must be written down, he thought. This should constitute the brief introduction that I considered unnecessary before. He got up to go to his desk, and Laska, who lay at his feet, also got up, stretching herself, and looked back at him as if asking where to go. But there was no time to write it down, because the foreman of the work details came, and Levin went out to them in the front hall. Having done the derailing, that is, given orders for the next day's work, and received all the muzhiks who had business with him, Levin went to his study and sat down to work. Laska lay under the desk. Agafya Mikhailovna settled in her place with a stocking. Levin had been writing for some time when suddenly, with extraordinary vividness, he remembered Kitty, her refusal, and their last encounter. He got up and began to pace the room. "No point being bored," Agafya Mikhailovna said to him. "Well, why do you sit at home? Go to the hot springs, since you're all ready." "I'll go the day after tomorrow, Agafya Mikhailovna. I have business to finish." "Well, what's this business of yours? As if you haven't given the muzhiks enough already. They say your master'll win favor with the Tsar for that. It's even strange. Why should you concern yourself with muzhiks?" "I'm not concerned with them. I'm doing it for myself." Agafya Mikhailovna knew all the details of Levin's plans for the estate. Levin often told her his thoughts in fine detail, and not infrequently argued with her, and disagreed with her explanations. But this time she completely misunderstood what he said to her. "It's a known fact. A man had best think of his own soul," she said with a sigh. "There's Parfen Denisitch, illiterate as they come, but God grant everybody such a death," she said of a recently deceased house servant. "Took communion, got anointed." "I'm not talking about that," he said. "I mean that I'm doing it for my own profit. The better the muzhiks work, the more profitable it is for me." "Whatever you do, if he's a lazybones, everything will come out slapdash. If he's got a conscience, he'll work. If not, there's no help for it." "Yes, but you say yourself that Ivan takes better care of the estate now." "I say one thing," Agafya Mikhailovna answered, evidently not at random, but with a strictly consistent train of thought. "You've got to get married, that's what." Agafya Mikhailovna's mention of the very thing he had just been thinking about upset and offended him. Levin frowned, and, without answering her, sat down to his work, repeating to himself everything he thought about the significance of that work. Only occasionally he listened in the silence to the sound of Agafya Mikhailovna's needles, and, recalling what he did not want to recall, winced again. At 9 o'clock they heard a bell and the dull heaving of a carriage through the mud. "Well, here's guests coming to see you, so you won't be bored," said Agafya Mikhailovna, getting up and going to the door. but Levine went ahead of her. His work was not going well now, and he was glad of a guest, whoever it might be. If you enjoy this format, please leave a like and subscribe and return tomorrow for the next chapter.